Welcome to the Leafy podcast, helping real estate investors and entrepreneurs grow. Say hello to your hosts, Jennifer Glagoric and Brian Price, founders of Leafy Legal Services, teaching you how to protect your assets, grow your business, and manage your wealth. Let's start the show.
Hey, everybody. Well, welcome to Leafy Podcast. Today, Tammy can't be with us, so it's me and Brian, and we have an amazing guest. So this guest has over a 30-year career, and they've been to 25 countries, 4 continents, and they work with CEOs, executives from startups to Fortune 10s. They are featured on Harvard Business Review, Forbes, Fortune Magazine, CEO Magazine, Business Insider, MSNBC Inc., Business Week, Smart Business, you name it. We have like one of the most amazing guests, the author of 8 books. He's done several TEDx talks, so you probably already seen him. And we have the fabulous Ron I said it right before. Ron Carucci. There we go. There we go. So welcome, Ron. I'm very excited that you get to be on the show today. And I know Brian is too.
Yeah,
how are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks you guys so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
Excellent. Yeah, let's, one of the things I love is about your leadership and all the studying that you've done. You mentioned, I've read that you did a 10-year-long study finding that over 50% of the people that come in to be an executive leader fail. So why is that? Because it's very interesting for me to know.
Yeah, before you get there, right?
Yeah.
And doesn't that suck? It became really personal for us. I think in one of my TEDx talks, I talk about this, but it became personal for us when it happened to somebody we're working with. One of our transformational projects, this young gentleman who had distinguished himself, that was beloved by the whole company, when the new design was finished, was offered a much bigger assignment, and nobody was shocked, and everybody thought, oh, he'll be great. And 9 months later, he called me. We had long left our part of the work, and I thought, oh, he's calling to check in. It's going to be great. Check him and say hello. He's calling to tell me he'd been fired, and that he needed help finding a new job. And I thought, what? Yeah. And a couple hours later, the CEO called to let me know they let him go. And he more than subtly implying that some of his responsibility for failure was mine, for not having better prepared him for the role, which of course, that's like somebody kicking you in the stomach.
Yeah.
And so I said, well, can I come back in and just on my own dime, sniff around? I just, if I so badly misjudged his potential or didn't, I want to understand. And that's what led us to our 10-year longitudinal, that little investigation set for this 10-year study with more than 2,700 leaders to understand why. How could somebody go from being, the next coming to a disaster in a year? That just made no sense to us.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out it's been a problem for 20 years. We've known it for a long time. Recruiters love it because it's an annuity for them, but everybody else, it's this, you have this phenomenal wasted talent. And what was really scary, you guys, was many of the landmines that are derailing these people, organizations put in their way. It's not like they're just sort of self-imploding. And I went back to that CEO and I said, I'll take responsibility for not warning him about all the landmines he was going to face on the way up. You need to take responsibility for putting him there. So we set people up to fail from the very outset. Here's an example. During an interview, and you probably have seen this before, I'm sure your listeners have, we say things to people like, wow, look at these great apps you've built before. That's what we need here. Or, my gosh, you've built these great sales teams before. We need great sales teams here. Or, wow, you really turned that supply chain around. That's the kind of problem we have. And in statements like that seem so innocuous in an interview, reading a resume, we set people up to fail. Because what we're saying to people is, you have a recipe. You have a formula. We want you to reach back to your past successes and try and repeat them here. So we've all seen the movie. The person comes in with this mythical mandate to come and change. They start slapping on their formula. What happens? People resist. Nobody wants to be slapped at. Nobody wants to be indicted. So what does the person do? They slap harder. Then they go to the hiring manager and say, you didn't tell me it was this bad. And they get frustrated. And their frustration becomes an indictment. People start to back away. Then what happens? They weren't a fit.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, how many people have I interviewed? You know, I did HR strategy for a long time. I was a recruiter. I worked for management recruiters. And those things probably have come out of my mouth a million times. You know, you did it over there, come and do this over here, but everything is a different animal.
It's a different animal. And that's what we have to tell them. Come bring what you might have learned over there and apply it here, but first figure out, what does this environment have to change in you before you're ready to change something in it? And the leaders that succeeded knew that they weren't just all about one-way change. They had to adapt. They couldn't go native, right? Because their outsiderness is helpful, but they had to go native just enough to earn their credibility before they could start slapping on, you know, their do it my way thing.
Yeah, that's very interesting, because I find that happens so often is we want people. I mean, I've been interviewed multiple times, and it's always like, yeah, what have you done in the past? Oh, great, we want that here too. But it's always, in working with a number of startups, is you do the same thing, but it's always different. It's always totally different than what you want it to be, if you have the opportunity to do it. But I could see someone coming in at the top in a big leadership role, they're kind of expected to hit the ground running. When, you know, most people in maybe a lower type of, you know, role maybe has some time to get, acclimatized and has leadership to lead them through versus, you know, just basically, hey, you're in charge, you do what you want to do, even though the rest of the team isn't bought in.
Brian, you'd be surprised that even people in the middle don't get guided well, don't get well. They all feel like left to fend for themselves.
Yeah.
And so we tell people all the time, don't hit the ground running, hit the ground learning.
Okay.
And you have to study the context, no matter what level you enter at. But then somebody comes along and says, well, what's your 90-day plan? And we've all heard people say, I'm just going to spend the first few months learning and listening. I have so much to learn. And they have that posture. Then someone says, where's your plan? And all the learning goes out the window. And we start dust and teams form and consultants come in, and it's a big mess.
Right.
And that,
golly, I got to tell you, Ron, that I am resembling myself a lot on this because, you know, and I'm thinking of Brian and I, like we went from building other businesses to building this business. And I can see how I've brought that mentality for myself. I've done it before. I've done it in this niche. I'm going to do it the same way again, but yet it's not exactly the same because it's not the same people. It's not the same time frame, even if you just got off the same challenges. Wow. That is,
so, and guys,
I'm going to learn from this.
That's just one. So we call that, the great news about the research was that in addition to, my goal was to uncover every landmine we could find and explode all of them. That was just the first one, but there was dozens of others. But we were also able to isolate, well, if half the other people are sticking the landing and thriving when they get in there, what are they doing? And we were actually able to isolate the success factors that separated the ones that stuck the landing from those that flamed out. And context was one of the major factors. They could read the tea leaves. They could read the context. They could adapt. They knew they had to be curious before they could have answers. They didn't go up trying to be the answer ATM. They showed up going, I have to learn first. They didn't take the bait on the mandate. They didn't take the bait on, you know, letting their halo become a noose. And they learn. But we pressure people in new roles, whether we're promoting them and then they have to prove themselves, or bring them in from outside, they feel like they have to prove themselves. We pressure them to perform way too soon before they're even able to. And then the classic, they just weren't a good fit, becomes the silly excuse.
Yeah. How would someone try to, quote unquote, read the tea leaves, as you said, in coming in, say they are being pushed to perform in their high level? What would you kind of help to kind of get someone on your side, especially like the CEO who wants it, results right away? Well,
a couple of things. First of all, on the way in, before you even sign a deal, say, let's talk about expectations here. Let's get clear on what's realistic here. Took you 20 years to screw this up. I'm not going to fix it in a month. So let's get clear what we're trying to fix here and what we can expect and when. But when you enter, what you have to remember is that nobody knows how screwed up things are more than the people who are living with it being screwed up. So you have to convince. Now, of course, they're going to be defensive. They're going to be afraid of you. They're going to want to hide. You have to win them over. They have to trust that you're a safe leader to admit how screwed up things are. and listen and truly listen to them. You need to get data. When we go into our organizations with our clients, we do what we call an MRI. We get a deep forensic look under the hood, because there are things you can't see. There are things lurking around the corners that are waiting for you. Go and find out what's there. Hear the voices of people whose voices have been sent out of the room, right? So they're frustrated. They feel unheard. And they want it fixed too. There's things that need to be changed. They want it changed. Mm-hmm. Some of them will look resistant because they're in the what I call the "this too shall pass" club, meaning we've heard this before. We've seen this come. You're one more flavor of the month, and so they're cynical. And so you have to, if you're going to make a promise for real change, you got to keep it. So take the time to learn and get people on the side of learning with you, help them discover what the opportunities are, and then create the future solutions together. You spend more time on the front end, but you go much faster later. So ask questions, be curious. Don't assume you have answers to questions nobody's asking.
Mm-hmm. Right. Can I ask you a question? So when you're looking to make an organizational change, what is your time frame that's considered a healthy time frame? Because, we worked a lot with entrepreneurs, and we still try to help entrepreneurs do their structures. That's what we do in our other daily lives when we're not on the podcast. And they all want it now. Well, how soon? This in the next 2 weeks or the next month? Do you have any sort of kind of timeline? Like, if you really want good change, you need to give it at least this long from beginning to execution.
It's a great question. I think it depends on the size of the organization and the complexity of the change. But in startup organizations, we only have 40, 50 people. You do have the ultimate time, because it doesn't have to reach that far. Mm-hmm. But a lot of times people confuse announcing change with actually getting change. There's always a lag time. So, change management, good change management work includes understanding what it is people are seeing. For most leaders, I'm announcing a great idea. I'm announcing good news. For everybody else, change isn't about a new beginning. Change starts with an ending, right? Mm-hmm. And so when we end, we have to grieve. So you may say, hey, here's this new thing, but there are people who love the old thing. Yeah. And so if you try and sidestep past what they're grieving, they're going to hold on. And you see that as they're just being bad attitude and they're resisting. Well, no, you didn't give them a chance to let go of what it was you took away from them. So you have to manage the change process of what people are going to be experiencing in terms of their own resistance and their own confusion and their own sense of loss and their own fear of a loss of power. Somebody is having power taken away from them. Somebody is having a sense of identity lost. I'm the one that does the meetings. And so if you're going to stop the meeting, what am I supposed to do? Well, what they're telling you is they're not being possessive or territorial. It looks that way. What they're telling you is my sense of identity is wrapped up in what you're taking from me. So who am I now if we don't do that anymore? Mm-hmm. And all those questions have to be answered. And most leaders forget that if those questions aren't relevant to them, it doesn't mean they're not relevant. You're still responsible to anticipate the stakeholders you're asking to change. What are their needs? What are their concerns? And managing the process accordingly. The other thing you have to do is have a plan, right? So announcing a reorg and moving the org chart around and building the org chart did nothing, right? You haven't, other than wrote down a new org chart, but new roles have changed. New decision pathways have formed. You have to design the governance processes. You have to do all the other work that comes with your new org chart. Just announcing a new org chart is like the same as saying, I'm 100 pounds overweight. I'm going to lose weight.
Yay!
Nothing happened. Somebody said, come in and said, I'm going to lose weight. And I'm like, right now? So what does that really mean? You've announced something, but people think I've worked through all my stuff to get to that announcement. I'm done. Mm-hmm. For everybody else, nothing's even begun yet. And so what I find that most leaders don't do is that they forget about the process of actually managing the change they've announced. Yeah. They just declare something as though it were actually now true.
We see that because we try for people to change their basic structures. And you think, oh, that's just some legal paperwork, right? To go from the LLC or writing things in my own name and putting them in this and now putting them in a series LLC. But there's actually a whole mind shift that goes to, no, you're protecting your assets. Now you have to write all the checks in this, and then you transfer it over. And then the way you do your bookkeeping is going to be a little bit different. And that's a little bit scary for people. Is it hard? No, it's more bookkeeping. Is there a payoff? Well, absolutely. You're protecting, you're protecting your legacy, and you're making everything so much easier for the rest of your life. But at the same time, that's difficult for them. And then I've also noticed when people do this with software, especially in startups, but any company, oh, well, we're going to go to a new CRM. Well, when you're a huge organization, that's a big deal. That's a problem. When you're in a younger organization, you throw a new software. I don't think most people realize how that upsets people, especially if it took them a while to learn that and they feel like they're an expert in what they're doing right now. And now they have to do it all over again. It really unsettles people, even if it's just as simply as we're going to use a new calendar scheduler. You have to think about that ahead of time. Yeah.
Well, and one of the biggest challenges in startups, of course, is that they hate standardization. Right? Yeah. They think it's like constraining and constraining innovation, and so you walk into any startup and you're going to find at least 40 Slack channels, right? Yeah. 25 of which are doing the same thing, right? Everybody gets to have their favorite thing. The minute and what most entrepreneurs don't understand is that if you growing and scaling are different, so you may be adding top line revenues, you're not scaling anything. Right? Because your cost is following you. So the repeatability and standardization is the only place you have scalability. The problem is you have to impose discipline, which means you have to say no. So the minute you say, we're going to use this schedule only instead of a 20 we're currently using, it means that the minute you catch somebody using one of the other 20, you got to smack them. Right? They have to be shut down. And you have to do the training. And you have to teach people why it's important. And you have to teach people the benefits. And they're going to whine and complain for an hour, but help them migrate and see the benefits. And then you have a standardization in place. Most organizations that are going from that startup to grow up phase, it's like the teenage boy in his dad's suit, right? They haven't grown up yet. And they're just flopping with the sleeves. But the reality is that they don't understand that you've got to create repeatable processes if you actually want to scale your business, and most of them don't want to do that. And so the change resistance becomes recalcitrance and whining and this is big company crap and this is what we came here to get away from and all those whining things. Right. The reality is standardization and repeatability is what should unleash your creativity. Right, that's what should actually give you more capacity to do things that are important. If we're all doing scheduling and communications and texting in 20 different ways, it's exhausting, and you actually are leaking and hemorrhaging capacity everywhere. Yeah.
One of the things that I find is when you're converting over to something more standardized, it's a lot of times it's like the owner or the top level people that have kind of been the people that have been doing it have a hard time changing. And I've noticed that resistance is usually the hardest. Have you seen the same thing, or is it something just across the board that usually happens?
Well, I think sometimes it's the pet project, right? It's the pet, and that's always dangerous, right? Because that means it's not going to last. There'll be another pet project a month later. One of the most interesting challenges I see, especially in the startup world you're living in, whenever I ask the founder or the leader, what is your strategy? I get the business plan, I get the Series A pitch, I get some made up mission statement or value statement. I get some, counterfeit. And I'm like, that's all very interesting, but tell me who you are. Tell me why it is you believe people would choose you over that, the people who do what you do. Because they all in love with their own ideas, right? They all think, well, no one's doing this. Really, it actually turns out 10 people are. And so having a sense for here's why we compete, here's why we win, and here's why we're different, and actually showing that they actually are making the investments accordingly, they haven't done that work. Or some of them will say, well, we're too small for that strategy stuff. Well, it turns out you're never too small to actually have an identity and swim lanes. From that set of identity, all other decisions flow. So anytime there's a pet project or there's a favorite approach to something, you can always tell if it's idiosyncratic or if it really is strategic by simply saying, tell me how that gets me more of this identity. Tell me how that advances this cause. And if there's a 3-second pause, I know we're not going anywhere, right? If it's it's real clear. If we do this, I advance this cause this way, then I know it's strategic. I can explain it. I can make it relevant. If everybody's rolling their eyes going, oh, here we go again. He likes, he wants to stock the fridge with Perrier instead of Evian. Then it's just about his. Now, you're the owner. Your name's on the building. right? So you get to have it your way. But just say, you know what? It's my company. We're doing it my way. I like Evian, or I like Peregrino, or I like whatever. Just own it. What makes people crazy and you just completely erode your own credibility is when you try and make your own idiosyncratic pet project look strategic and important and relevant to everybody. Everybody's like, really? So they're just all rolling their eyes. And then now you've institutionalized duplicity. Now you've said, we all know we say one thing, but we do another, we mean something else. And that's just how we do things around here. Next time you're in a meeting and there's a real major problem with your product that someone knows and sees, but won't bring up, you've taught them not to. You've said, we don't really talk about real things. We say something else. So you promoting your own little pet idiosyncratic project as if it was really important to everybody has far longer of a tail and negative implications on it than just annoying people. You're changing the culture of the organization.
This is all so interesting. And for anyone who's out there getting into real estate investment, most of our listeners are like that, or even entrepreneurs. I think that a good thing to bring up right now is that you do start with just you, because at one point it was just you in your business. And take the time to figure these things out, to map it out, and assume you're going to be successful. Assume that you're going to be getting other people on your team, whether it's just, I'm going to have a contractor I work with, I'm going to have a person I work with, and I'm going to need an assistant to help me with this. I think that if you start out of, this is just going to be something I'm doing on the side, for investors specifically, that's not a recipe for success. What a recipe for success is, I'm going to be successful with this. This is what I'm going to work hard at, and this is my plan for that. And by the way, this all comes into Ron's latest book, which is, and it's a #1 Amazon bestseller. You can get it at Amazon. It's called Rising to Power. He co-authored it with Eric Hansen, and you can also visit his website. I just want to bring that up for the people who are listening. It's www.navalent.com. He does have a free ebook giveaway too. So there's a lot of great information, and you can find it. So we'll go back to talking to him. I wanted to break to let everybody know who's getting overwhelmed, because this is all so great, that don't worry, he's written it all down. You don't have to memorize all of this, guys. So the other things that you have looked at, so in going with an organization, and what do you think is the #1? Well, not #1. So we talked about there's these roadblocks, right? But you said there's also things that make the people more successful. And we talked a little bit about some of them. Can you give us more of the things that people can focus on to be more successful?
Yeah, and this is especially important for entrepreneurs who are starting to build their organization, because most of the time, especially if they get like a Series A check, suddenly you go from 50 bodies to 200 bodies. You just start hiring people. And you see, it's just mayhem, right? But if you ask them, well, why are you hiring these people? You can't tell any rhyme or reason about why certain bodies over others. The reality is that breadth really matters in terms of organizational. So one of the things that set those successful leaders apart was they understood the importance of seams. If you're in a startup software company, you know the relationship between engineering and operations, between product marketing and marketing. You know there are classic border wars. In real estate development, it's the agents versus the operations versus the salespeople. There are classic places and organizations that have seams that disconnect. And depending on which one of those silos you might have grown up in, you're going to play more to one seam than the other. If you grew up in finance, you're going to see the world economically. If you grew up in sales agents, in selling real estate, you're going to see the world through top line dollars. If you grew up in operations, you're going to see the world in bottom line processes. As you rise up, those silos become less important and actually more of a liability. Cohesion is what's important. So the great leaders and entrepreneurs build integration. They build organizations to work together more cohesively and more harmoniously. They help people build bridges across those seams rather than reinforce the fragmentation that's already there. Even in a 40-person company or a 30-person company, you're going to see, subcultures and pods. And it's especially true in technology worlds where you have marketers and salespeople and product marketing and engineers and operations people and programmers. They all just see the world through their own little thing, and they don't think about how does what I do and what they do fit together. But that's what a leader's job is to create the synergy to make 1 + 1 = 3. Every leader needs to figure out, before they even start hiring people, you have 3 types of work in your organization. You have competitive work. That's the work that directly touches, advancing your cause in the marketplace. It's the work, if you put $1 in that work, $5 comes in the door. There's competitive enabling work. That's the work that directly supports your competitive work. So combined, that's about 35, maybe 40% of your work. 60% of your work is necessary work. Keeps you out of jail, keeps you in compliance, keeps the lights on. You don't have to do it better than anybody else. You don't get paid for that. But if you do it badly, it's a problem. So maximum efficiency, least amount of cost. But competitive enabling work is where you should put all your talent and all your money. You have to do that better than anybody else to compete. Well, what happens as you grow and scale is you mix it all together. And the minute it's all mixed together, the necessary work completely eclipses the competitive work because it feels more urgent. And so people don't know how to make trade-offs with their time. And at a small size, it's likely that you have people touching a little bit of each.
Yeah.
Well, if every day what the necessary work is causing them to sort of defer the competitive work, you're just going to become more and more mediocre. And so if you don't know which work is which, everybody thinks, oh, it's all equal. Well, it's not all equal. I'm sorry, but the people in accounting paying the bills, they're important human beings. We love them. Their work is not as important as the coders who are coding the patented technology. And we can't treat them that way. We can't resource them that way. We can't compensate them that way. But we do. We sort of homogenize it all. And so understanding breadth, understanding how the pieces fit together and which ones are more important than others is so critical. And often entrepreneurs are not thinking that way at all.
Yeah, that's very interesting you bring that up because, I've seen that time and time again, especially in small companies, is everybody's just running as fast as they can, expecting everybody else to keep up with them. Yep. And then all the regular stuff just gets left behind.
and what is it people say, Brian, about that energy? Oh, look at all the people love the energy.
Yeah.
Well, they don't. They're being driven. It's mayhem and they're being driven crazy. And you can hear the seams ripping and they're like pulling their hair out and they're exhausted. But the entrepreneur thinks, oh, isn't this exciting? Turns out it's not.
Yeah, not for most people that are doing the regular work. It's exhausting, and then they end up 6 months later just needing to take a month off or just quitting. So,
and the worst thing they do is your talented ones quit and leave.
Yeah.
Your untalented ones quit and stay.
Yes.
It's true.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, this is so eye-opening. I'm thinking about things, like times I've seen that or worked with places that have done that absolute thing, or they've placed, they categorize things higher. So sales will be higher, marketing will be higher. Those are things that will be higher, but then they will absolutely not categorize anything organizationally. And so then what happens is they get this influx of customers. So great, all this money came in, and then they want refunds because nothing else is working. There's no support. There's no back end because, well, that's not important. It's important to get the sale. It's not actually important to deliver the product, right? Or, especially if you're talking about service. Service, I see that a lot. It's different if they actually do get something, but then there's still the service aspect or the compliance aspect. Right. So I think I've seen it a little bit opposite, and I think Brian has too on some things. We've worked in very high income entrepreneurial things where the explosion at the very beginning was the money. There was nothing in the background, and guess what? Those companies aren't around anymore. They made a lot of money, but they got into a lot of trouble. Yep. We've seen that too.
Yep. People think that they prioritize top line sales and they confuse it as growth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
It's not scaling. It's volume. But the reality is, if your costs are ballooning at the same rate, or you think the market's rewarding you for what you're doing when it's actually not. It's just luck, right? But when you can't sustain it anymore, or you hit a glitch and you can't get out of it, that's when you know you had stage 4 cancer the whole time and just kept pretending you didn't.
Yeah. You're trying to outrun the inevitable, and it just makes it more and more. I've seen many entrepreneurs do that. They get pretty big, and then what they do, because it's not interesting anymore, they go on to the next thing. There's many well-known people that you may have heard that are really good at what they do, and they come up with the next big thing. But it's pandemonium behind the scenes.
Oh my gosh, you have the classic, new sexy shiny object syndrome with most entrepreneurs, and the reality they don't realize the damage they do to organizations when they lose focus. And the most important thing an executive can learn to do, we learned this in our research, choice making, saying no, learning to say no to even great ideas, so that the ones you've made prevail. But if you're doling out way too many yeses because you love the sexiness of a new idea, you are diluting the resources of the organization and the focus and the ability to do, and to your point, do anything well, right? Because I'm just trying to do too many things, mediocre. And entrepreneurs hate to say no. And if you know that about yourself, great. Hire a leader to lead your company after you build it and go on to your next thing, but leave it in the hands of somebody who actually cares about how to lead it, not just, but they build the identity so much around them, they can't separate themselves from it.
Yeah, that's a tough one. You want to have a strong brand, so that's very important. But if you leave that, and that is the brand, and now you're going on to somewhere else, you have to have that exit strategy ahead of time. If you know that about yourself, because then you're going to have this organization that's going to crash because you're the brand and you just walked out the door.
Yep.
And that needs to be thought of. Like if you're branding yourself as the interior designer and you make this interior design, and then you do that for a while and you walk out because now you're going to start a staging company instead. That's a little bit interior design, but then you decide to go and build houses. And that happens, and it does happen too. That's very, very interesting. Is there anything that you can tell us from the very beginning when you talked about in your book Rise to Power, that the biggest takeaway? I know you probably have a lot of takeaways in that book, but what's the biggest takeaway that our listeners can get?
I think when it comes to the relationships you form, be thinking clearly about on what basis do you want others to evaluate their connection with you. The successful leaders in the research were the ones that didn't prioritize the stakeholders according to what they needed from them, which a lot of entrepreneurs do. They actually prioritized their stakeholders according to who they could make successful, on who could they advance the cause of. And they were known as being generous and smart. People wanted to be around them. Most entrepreneurs either become benevolent dictators, right? Or they buy popularity and they're Santa Claus, but they don't make hard decisions. The greatest leaders are the ones who have really high standards and hold you accountable to them, but who you're around, and you know that because you're in their presence, you'll be better. It's everybody's favorite boss, right? We all have seen them. So be the leader who prioritizes your time according to whose agenda can I advance? Who can I make more successful? Who can I help learn? I one leader in our study asked everybody the same three questions. He would ask, what can I do to be a better colleague to you? What are you working on today that is really important to you? And what can I do to help you with that really important thing? And people knew that he meant those questions and that he would have their back. He's now a very successful executive who's headed to be CEO of a very large company, grew up through the ranks, but a deeply caring individual. And he was not a taker, right? He really was somebody who had high demanding standards of people, but invested in them to help them become better versions of themselves. And that's the power of, when you're in a leadership role, the kind of connections you can build with people. So be known as somebody who other people want to be around because they become better versions of themselves because they were there.
That is such great advice, because I know a lot of times you meet people that think they are, but they don't actually act it. And so I think it's really good to also be mindful of, you can say it, but if you don't really do it and walk it, then it's entirely not necessarily true as well. Because I've met a number of people like that they think they're there for them, but then they don't really do that. So I think that's really great. Yeah. And
all you do is irritate people, right? You're angry. It's like the classic, I can tell who went to the Tony Robbins seminar. But you're saying the words that you heard Tony told you to say, but you have no idea what they really mean. And there's no calibration, right? Leaders need feedback. You are, especially entrepreneurs, are notoriously bad observers of their own reality. You need feedback. You need to have people around you telling you how they're experiencing your leadership. If you assume that no news is good news, you're you are headed off a cliff. You have to have a mechanism in place, whether it's a formal 360 process or some other way that people can routinely tell you when your intentions and your impact don't match. I tell leaders, here's the standard. If at least 2 or 3 times a week, somebody is not coming into your office and saying something that's uncomfortable to hear to you, what it means is you suck as a leader.
Wow.
You just assume you suck. 2 to 3 times a week at least. And I don't mean whiners and complainers. I mean really pointing out flaws and problems and challenges in the organization, in the team, in you, things you didn't do well in a meeting. If you assume that no news is good news, you suck. And what's happening is that somewhere there's a bomb growing, just waiting to go off.
Yeah.
Right. And then if they do, those are people you keep around, especially if they're being constructive. There's a difference between the negative, sky is falling type of people. Every now and then you hire someone like that, and literally they will just poke holes in everything. That's their job. Well, sometimes that can be a drain. That's a mental drain if that's all that's happening.
Right.
But if they are being genuine and it is a genuine concern, then don't let them go. I've seen leaders do that. They get so upset with that or uncomfortable, they start finding reasons to let them go. Like, well, you're not so perfect.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a classic
that's not what it's about.
It's a classic shoot the messenger syndrome, right? And you what a gift. They're giving you a gift of they're trusting you as a leader and their relationship with you to tell you the truth. And if you think that, I've heard people be told by those leaders, you're being very negative. Okay, you can call it whatever you want. It doesn't change the problem. I was sitting with an executive once who, in the middle of our meeting, his IT person came in, and all tattooed and pierced, and he said, "You stay. You don't have to step out." So I get to sort of eavesdrop. He pulled out this file from his desk, the CEO, and said, "Hey, Chad, this is the capital plan for IT. I'm going to send it to the board. I want to know if you had a chance to look at it before I send it. What did you think of it?" And I look up and Chad's like all contorted and twisted and like confused. He said, "Well, Barry, I know you already sent it to the board yesterday, so I don't know what you're asking me to do here. If you're asking me to say, can I make it work, I will, but I don't know why you're asking my opinion on something you already sent." And he walks out. And Barry starts getting red in the neck. And he's like, "Do you see the kind of disrespect I have to put up with here? These millennials." I'm like, whoa, Barry, what do you think just happened here? My script says you got caught. My script says you try to pull wool over his eyes to make it look like he was being included in a decision you already made, and he blew smoke at you. My script says your next line is, "I'm sorry." Now you get your ass down the hallway there and you tell him you're sorry for doing that to him, and tell him that you trusted him and you really do care about what he thinks, and that you were trying to be fooling him. But the disrespect that happened here was you to him, not him to you. He went down there, apologized, and the two of them over the next couple of years became incredible allies because Chad would always tell Barry what the truth was. Barry,
wow, that is a very good story, and I've seen that a lot. And I've probably been guilty of that too. I mean, just not that exact thing, but just running with it. I'm the boss. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to do my own thing, and then circling back after I've already kind of made the decision. And I defend myself by saying, well, I'm just really busy, but really you shouldn't be that busy. I have to think about that.
You're either going to include people or not, but faux inclusion is offensive, right? We all know when a leader's trying to make it, I'm being empowering because I read the empowerment chapter. And so I'm trying to make it look like I care about your input to a decision that you already all know I made. Yeah. So, or which way I want to go, and I'm leading the witness here. So, don't either include people or tell people on the front end, here's my opinion, change my mind, or we're going to make the decision, or I've already made it, I want you to implement it. Just own it. But when you're trying to pretend, that people just get really offended.
And this works in a relationship. This works with spouses. This works, like with the kids.
You better
so what did you think? Well, you've already made the decision about, the kids, Karen. Why are you asking me now? That's rude, Anyway, guys, we're going to have to wrap it up here. We've been talking to Ron Carucci. I want to make sure I get his name right. You can find out a lot more about Ron by going to www.navalent, Navalent.com.
NAVA.
Navalent.com. Going to Navalent.com. And his newest book, Rising to Power, is on Amazon. It's a #1 book. And he has a free ebook if you go to Navalent.com. Navalent.
And actually, if you go to navalent.com/transformation,
Ooh.
you get right to the free ebook.
Oh, awesome.
Well, there you go. There you go.
We'll make sure to put that link in there as well.
Okay, guys. Well, this is the end of our show. We want to thank you, Ron, so much for being with us here on Leafy Podcast. Again, if you guys have any questions for Ron, you can always email Tammy, Tammy, at leafylegalservices.com. We're going to put all the notes to the show. We're going to put all the links to everything. We'll put a link to his book, a link to the website, and even a link straight to Transformation so you can get his free ebook. And you can find us at anywhere, iTunes, Spotify, you name it, we're everywhere. And again, thank you, Ron Carucci. I have to look down every time I look at that. Ron Carucci, for being here. Thank you so much. And everybody else, you have a fabulous week. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.
Attention real estate investors and entrepreneurs. Did you know that real estate investors are a primary target for lawsuits? According to the National Survey of the Court data, 25% of Americans risk being sued in their lifetime. However, if you are a real estate investor, you have a 95% chance of being sued in the next 20 years. Leafy Legal Services helps you protect your assets and strategically grow your business and wealth. Leafy Legal Services are experts at the Series LLC and Delaware Statutory Trust, two of the newest and most ideal legal structures for real estate investors. Leafy Legal Services have the most personalized and affordable solutions for setting up LLCs. Property owners are always at risk when it comes to their assets. Anonymity is so important. If you own just a rental house and you own your home, you have to protect yourself and your properties from any potential legal issues. Leafy Legal Services have the right solutions to make sure you are happy and feel secure. They offer cost-effective documentation that suits their clients' needs. For a free consultation and ebook, visit leafylegalservices.com. They are waiting to hear from you. leafylegalservices.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't wait. Take action now. LeafyLegalServices.com. Protect your assets, grow your business, and manage your wealth.